In 2003, nestled in a small coastal town where whispers carried faster than the sea breeze, a wedding took place that left everyone breathless. It was the union of two seemingly unmatched lives, Sarah, a humble librarian with a love for the written word, and Marcus, a millionaire whose wealth was as legendary as his charm. The town buzzed with gossip the moment the engagement was announced. How could a simple woman like Sarah capture the heart of a man who could have had anyone he wanted? Marcus was a self-made man, a businessman who had built an empire out of nothing. People admired him for his determination, but there was an air of mystery about him. Few really knew Marcus, and fewer still dared to pry. Sarah, however, had met him not in the glow of his wealth, but in the shadow of a rainy evening when she offered him a warm cup of coffee in her tiny library after he had wandered in, soaked to the bone. They had talked about books of all things, and something had clicked between them. Their whirlwind romance was the stuff of fairy tales, or so everyone thought. Marcus lavished Sarah with gifts, though she rarely accepted them, preferring the simple pleasures of their time together. She was the grounding force he had never known he needed, and he, in turn, opened her eyes to a world of possibilities. Their love seemed pure, genuine, a beacon in a world often clouded by superficiality. The wedding was an extravagant affair, held in the grandest venue Marcus could find. Guests from far and wide attended, dressed to the nines, marveling at the splendor of the event. Sarah, in her vintage lace gown, looked ethereal, and Marcus, in his tailored suit, appeared every bit the dashing groom. As they exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the room. They were the picture of happiness, the embodiment of love. But then came the day after. The town was stunned when Sarah left Marcus abruptly, without explanation. Whispers filled the streets. Had she married him for his money and changed her mind? Had Marcus done something unforgivable? Speculations ran wild, but Sarah remained tight-lipped. She returned to her modest home and resumed her quiet life as if the wedding had never happened. Marcus, meanwhile, disappeared from the public eye, his usually confident demeanor replaced by a shadow of melancholy. The truth behind Sarah's decision was something no one could have imagined. It wasn't cold feet or a hidden scandal. It was something far deeper, a revelation that had shaken her to her core. The night after their wedding, as they sat together in the glow of candlelight, Marcus had shared a secret. He had told Sarah about the lengths he had gone to in building his empire. There were things he wasn't proud of, things he had buried deep in the recesses of his mind. He spoke of deals that had destroyed lives, of ruthless decisions that had brought him immense wealth at the cost of his humanity. "I don't deserve you," he had whispered, tears streaming down his face. "I don't deserve the happiness you've given me, but I can't lie to you. You deserve the truth." Sarah had listened, her heart breaking with every word. She had always admired his ambition, his drive, but this side of Marcus was something she hadn't seen before. He was vulnerable, raw, and for the first time, truly honest. Yet, as much as she loved him, she couldn't reconcile the man she thought she knew with the man he truly was. She spent the night in turmoil, torn between her love for Marcus and her own principles. By morning, she had made her decision. "I love you, Marcus," she had said, her voice trembling. "But I can't be with someone who has caused so much pain, no matter how much they regret it. Love isn't enough to erase the past." Marcus hadn't argued. He had simply nodded, his eyes filled with sorrow. He knew she was right, and he respected her decision, painful as it was. The town never learned the full story, and neither Marcus nor Sarah ever spoke of it again. Marcus eventually moved away, dedicating himself to philanthropy, perhaps in an attempt to atone for his past. Sarah, meanwhile, continued her quiet life, her heart heavy but resolute. Years later, when people asked her about Marcus, she would smile faintly and say, "He was a good man who lost his way." But sometimes love isn't about holding on, it's about letting go. And so the story of Sarah and Marcus became a legend in the small coastal town, a tale of love, loss, and the courage to do what's right, even when it breaks your heart. But the story didn't truly end there. Life has a way of revisiting unresolved chapters, and for Sarah and Marcus, fate had more in store. Nearly a decade passed. Sarah's hair had begun to streak with silver, though her spirit remained as vibrant as ever. She had immersed herself in her work, building a sanctuary in her library for those seeking knowledge and comfort. Over the years, she often wondered about Marcus, not with regret, but with a lingering curiosity about where life had taken him. She knew he had moved far from the coastal town, but news of his ventures occasionally reached her ears. His philanthropy had become renowned, transforming communities and helping countless lives. It seemed he had truly sought redemption. One quiet autumn evening, as Sarah was closing the library, she heard a familiar voice behind her. "Still the guardian of all things literary, I see." She turned, and there he was. Marcus stood at the doorway, older but no less striking. His eyes carried a depth they hadn't before, a mixture of weariness and peace. For a moment, neither spoke. The weight of their shared history hung in the air, like the golden leaves drifting outside. "What brings you back here?" Sarah finally asked, her voice steady but soft. "I had some business nearby," Marcus replied, though the faint smile on his lips suggested otherwise, "and I thought it was time to visit an old friend." They sat together in the quiet library, the scent of old books wrapping around them like a familiar embrace. Marcus spoke of his journey, the ways he had tried to undo the harm he once caused, the lives he had touched through his work, and the lessons he had learned along the way. He had found peace, though it had come at great personal cost. "I never stopped thinking about you," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "Not a day went by that I didn't wonder if I had done things differently, if maybe—" He sounded halfway between prayer and crying out. Sarah placed a hand on his, silencing him gently. "We both made the choices we had to, and I'm glad to see you've found your path." Their conversation stretched late into the night, a reunion of two souls who had once shared something profound. As the clock struck midnight, Marcus rose to leave. "I won't keep you," he said. "But I'm glad I got to see you again, Sarah. You were the one good thing in my life when I didn't deserve it." She smiled, a bittersweet curve of her lips. "And you showed me that love can be real, even when it's complicated." As he walked away, Sarah felt a strange sense of closure, as though a chapter she hadn't realized was still open had finally been completed. But life, unpredictable as it is, had one more surprise in store. A week later, Sarah received a letter. It was from Marcus, written in his familiar, elegant handwriting. Inside, he shared a final truth, one he had been too afraid to voice in person. He confessed that his philanthropy had been inspired by her, by the ideals she had held so firmly to. "You were my compass, Sarah," the letter read. "Even when we were apart, you guided me toward becoming the man I should have been all along." The letter ended with an invitation. Marcus was organizing a large-scale project to build schools and libraries in underprivileged areas. He wanted Sarah to help him lead the initiative, to bring her expertise and passion to a cause close to both their hearts. Sarah sat with the letter for a long time, her heart torn between the quiet life she had built and the chance to make a greater impact. But deep down she knew her answer. She had spent years fostering a love for knowledge and community, and now she had the opportunity to extend that beyond the walls of her library. When Sarah arrived at the project's headquarters weeks later, Marcus greeted her with a warmth that felt like coming home. They worked side by side, their shared mission bringing them closer in ways they hadn't anticipated. The years apart had changed them both, but the core of their connection remained untouched. Their partnership flourished, not as a rekindled romance, but as something even more profound, a mutual respect and understanding born from their shared past and a vision for the future. Together, they transformed lives, building not just structures, but opportunities for those who had none. In the end, Marcus and Sarah didn't need a fairy tale ending to find fulfillment. Their story wasn't one of rekindled love, but of redemption, growth, and the enduring power of human connection. They remained in each other's lives, their bond unshaken, proving that sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones that evolve, leaving both people better than they were before. And in that small coastal town, their tale continued to be told, not as a tragedy, but as a testament to the choices that define us and the courage it takes to rewrite our narratives. As the years passed, the collaboration between Sarah and Marcus became the cornerstone of their lives. Their project, aptly named New Horizons, grew beyond their wildest dreams. It wasn't just about schools and libraries anymore. It became a movement for change. Communities that had once been forgotten were now thriving, and the impact of their work echoed far beyond their original vision. Sarah found herself traveling more than she ever had, visiting places she'd only read about in books. From remote villages to bustling cities, her work brought her face to face with people whose lives had been transformed. Each success story reminded her of why she had accepted Marcus's offer, why she had stepped out of her comfort zone to make a difference. For Marcus, the work was his penance and his salvation. Every project completed, every child who learned to read, every community given a chance to flourish, it all brought him closer to the man he had always wanted to be. Yet, despite the fulfillment his work brought, he couldn't deny the solace he found in Sarah's presence. She was his anchor, his constant, the person who saw through his flaws and still believed in his capacity for good. Their partnership, while purely professional, was deeply personal. They understood each other in ways no one else could. Their shared history gave them a connection that didn't need words to express. People often assumed they were a couple, but they would simply smile and let the assumption stand. What they shared was beyond labels, a relationship that defied easy definition. One day, during a quiet moment between meetings, Marcus approached Sarah with a question that had been on his mind for some time. "Do you ever think about the life we could have had?" he asked, his voice steady but tinged with vulnerability. Sarah looked at him, her eyes thoughtful. "I do," she admitted, "but I don't regret the path we took. If we hadn't made those choices, we wouldn't be here, doing what we're doing now. And this feels right." Marcus nodded, her words resonating deeply. "You're right. As much as I wish I could go back and change so many things, I wouldn't trade this for anything." Their bond grew even stronger in the years that followed, as they faced challenges and celebrated triumphs together. There were moments of doubt, of exhaustion, but they always found strength in each other. And through it all, their shared purpose remained unwavering. Eventually, their work began to attract attention on a global scale. New Horizons became a model for sustainable development, and Sarah and Marcus were hailed as pioneers in their field. Awards and accolades poured in, but they remained grounded, always focusing on the people they were helping rather than the recognition they received. One day, while attending a ceremony honoring their work, Marcus took a moment to reflect on how far they had come. Standing on the stage, looking out at the sea of faces, he felt a surge of gratitude for the second chance life had given him, for the partnership that had changed everything, and for the woman who had never stopped believing in the good he could do. When he looked at Sarah sitting in the front row, he saw not just the woman he had loved, but the woman who had taught him what love truly meant. It wasn't about possession or romance. It was about selflessness, about lifting each other up, about creating something meaningful together. As the applause died down, Marcus stepped to the microphone. His speech was brief but heartfelt. "None of this would have been possible without Sarah," he said, his voice steady. "She's the heart of everything we do, the reason I found my way back to the man I wanted to be. This isn't just my redemption, it's our legacy." The audience rose to their feet, their applause thunderous. Sarah, ever humble, blushed but smiled, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. In the years that followed, Marcus and Sarah continued their work, mentoring a new generation of leaders to carry on their mission. They knew they wouldn't always be there, but they were confident that the seeds they had planted would continue to grow. And so their story became more than just a tale of love and loss. It was a testament to the power of redemption, the strength of resilience, and the beauty of a bond that could withstand anything. In the twilight of their lives, as they sat together on a quiet evening, Sarah turned to Marcus with a soft smile. "Do you think we did enough?" she asked. Marcus reached for her hand, his grip firm but gentle. "More than enough," he said. "We gave people hope, we gave them a future, and we did it together." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the world in a warm, golden glow, they sat in silence, content in the knowledge that their story wasn't just theirs. It belonged to everyone whose lives they had touched. And in that, they found their happily ever after. As the days turned into months and the months into years, the work Sarah and Marcus had started continued to evolve. They began to step back, allowing the younger generation of leaders they had mentored to take the reins. It was a bittersweet transition, but one they both knew was necessary. Their legacy wasn't just in the structures they had built or the initiatives they had launched. It was in the people they had empowered to carry on their mission. In their quieter moments, Sarah and Marcus often reminisced about the journey they had taken together. They spoke of the challenges they had faced, the lives they had touched, and the bond that had seen them through it all. Though their relationship had never returned to the romantic connection it once was, it had deepened into something even more enduring, a partnership rooted in mutual respect, trust, and an unshakable sense of purpose. One summer evening, as they sat on the porch of a small cottage Marcus had purchased for them to use as a retreat, he turned to Sarah with a question that had been on his mind. "Do you ever wish things had been different?" he asked, his voice soft but earnest. Sarah looked at him, her eyes thoughtful. "I used to," she admitted. "In the early days, I wondered what might have been if we had stayed together. But now, looking back, I realize that everything happened the way it was meant to. We wouldn't have accomplished all this if we hadn't walked our separate paths first." Marcus nodded, her words resonating deeply. "You always see the bigger picture," he said with a smile. "It's one of the things I admire most about you." Their conversation drifted into comfortable silence, the kind that only comes from years of understanding and shared experiences. The world around them was quiet, save for the gentle rustling of leaves and the distant sound of waves crashing against the shore. One day, a letter arrived that would change everything. It was from a young woman named Elena, one of the many beneficiaries of their programs. She wrote about how the library they had built in her village had opened doors she never thought possible. She had gone on to earn a scholarship, travel abroad, and start her own nonprofit organization. "I owe my life to the work you both have done," Elena wrote, "and I want you to know that your legacy lives on, not just in me, but in the countless others you've inspired. Thank you for giving us hope." The letter brought tears to Sarah's eyes, and even Marcus, who rarely showed his emotion so openly, was visibly moved. It was a reminder that their work had created ripples far beyond what they could see. As they grew older, their health began to decline, as it does with time. Marcus, once so vibrant and full of energy, found himself moving more slowly, his steps less sure. Sarah, too, felt the weight of the years, though her mind remained as sharp as ever. They leaned on each other, their bond stronger than ever. At the end of each day, they would call each other by name. One evening, as they sat by the fireplace in their cottage, Marcus reached for Sarah's hand. "Thank you," he said simply. "For what?" she asked, her voice soft. "For everything," he replied. "For believing in me when I couldn't believe in myself. For showing me what it means to truly care about others. For being my friend, my partner, my guiding light." Sarah squeezed his hand, her eyes glistening. "You've done the same for me, Marcus. We've both walked this road together, and I wouldn't trade a single moment of it." Not long after, Marcus passed away peacefully in his sleep, leaving behind a legacy that would be remembered for generations. Sarah mourned him deeply, but her grief was tempered by the knowledge that he had found redemption and peace. In the years that followed, Sarah continued to honor his memory, dedicating herself to the causes they had championed together. She spoke at events, mentored young leaders, and shared their story with anyone who would listen. When Sarah's time finally came, she too passed away, surrounded by those whose lives she had touched. Her funeral was a celebration of a life well lived, attended by people from all walks of life who had been inspired by her work. And so the story of Sarah and Marcus came to an end, not as a tale of unfulfilled love or tragedy, but as a testament to the power of second chances, the importance of doing what's right, and the enduring impact of two people who dared to make a difference. Their names became synonymous with hope and change, their legacy immortalized in the lives they had transformed. And though they were gone, their story lived on, a beacon of inspiration for those who came after them, proving that even the most imperfect paths can lead to something truly extraordinary.